everyone. Welcome, excuse me, welcome to Advisory Design Panel for the 22nd of October 2020. We have, actually I don't have the agenda in front of me, strangely enough. Can you steal one? Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to call the meeting to order, number one. Number two, adoption of the agenda. I'm assuming nobody has any additions or anything to the agenda. So I think we just adopt that. We don't have to take a vote, do we?
Take a vote?
Yeah. We're just going to adopt the agenda.
Right.
We have two sets of minutes to go through. So we have the minutes from, I think it's the 24th of September. And we have the minutes from, we'll do those first. So has everybody had a chance to review the minutes? Are there any questions, comments, additions, deletions? Seeing none, could I have a motion to adopt those minutes? Tony, thank you. Second?
I'll make.
Kevin?
Second.
Yep. And all in favor? Excellent. I'm not voting because I wasn't there. Okay, and the second set of minutes were from our October 8th meeting. Again, assuming everybody's had a chance to review them, are there any comments or additions or deletions? Seeing none, I'm going to call for a motion to adopt those minutes.
I'll make the motion.
Kevin, thank you. Seconder? Brady, thank you. All in favor?
I wasn't there, so I'm not voting.
Okay, that's great. We have adopted our minutes. And tonight we have two presentations, starting with 4951 Jordan Avenue, and Lainey is going to introduce that one.
Development permit application BP 001203 at 4951 Jordan Avenue is for an industrial development with 2,878 meters squared of gross floor area distributed between three buildings. The subject property is located at the intersection of Mostar Road and Jordan Avenue. It is zoned I2 light industrial and is designated light industrial in the official community plan. It falls within development permit area 9, and the general development permit area guidelines apply to the proposed development. One variance to reduce the minimum required front yard setback from 4.5 meters to 2.5 meters, a variance of 2 meters, is proposed. And attending the meeting tonight, we have a whole team. We've got Will Melville, who I believe is going to be doing the presentation. We've got Brian from BJK Architecture, Scott Jensen from Herald Engineering, Brad Forth from Foresight Landscape Architecture, and Jason Schmidt and Sarah Plumondon from Momentum Design Build.
Great, thank you. Did you say Will's doing the presentation?
Yeah, that's what I had.
I think he's nodding his head, and I think he's trying to take control of the screen. So. And you are muted, or is that you?
I think you're muted to get here.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Good. Well, good evening, everybody. And this is kind of my first shot at doing a design panel via Zoom. On several meetings to date, but this is an interesting one with all participants here. Thanks, Lainey, for introducing the team. And if I may, I'll just hopefully you can see. So our presentation then will start off with just sort of a broad overview of the project and its location. Pretty prominent location. I'm sure there's enough traffic going on Mostar that everybody's familiar with the site. It's been sitting vacant for some time, sitting on the corner of Mostar and Jordan Avenue. Immediately to the south, we have light industrial in all sorts of formats, most of it larger warehousing, combinations of retail showroom. To the west, we have an enclave of residential. Just to the north, we have Slate Lumber, and to the east, we have a park in this triangular area here, and of course, there's a proposed development happening on multifamily residential development happening on Ledgerwood. So the site has some inherent challenges. Actually, just a few street views here. Again, I'm sure everybody's quite familiar. Directly beneath the big arrow is the subject property. This is the intersection of Jordan and Mostar looking south. Just to highlight a couple of things. One is this large Allen block retaining wall that fronts on Mostar. And we go to another shot. There's a shot of the same retaining wall. Just want to highlight that because I think there'll be some discussion on that. This is a shot on Jordan Avenue looking west. And again, I want to just draw some attention to this little note of parking and gravel area that's there. Again, I'll speak to that in a little bit. I'm just going to skip this slide and just go to a larger version of the site plan. A couple of challenges on this site. One is its shape. It's triangular. Triangular shaped sites in my experience aren't really conducive to rectangular buildings. So it's been interesting getting the format of things to work. You'll note that the approach that we've taken is essentially to do a 3-building development, each one street facing, building 1 facing Jordan, 2 is the most prominent at the intersection, and building 3, which is backing against a large warehouse, it's the Coca-Cola building. The other challenge, or another challenge on this site, is topography. It's fairly gently sloped, actually, from the intersection heading southward along Mostar. But that little parking node and gravel area that I highlighted on the street image is really fill, and it's not structural fill, so it's nor is it natural grade. So that in essence will be removed from the site and reinstate a more natural grading to it. As I said, sort of general organization of the buildings is street fronting and around the perimeter. We have our access point coming in midway along the frontage on Jordan Avenue. It's more or less in the location of an existing access point to the site, or former access to the site. I think there was a residence on here at one time. Entrance coming in fairly central. All of the parking is in between and behind and around the buildings. We have a storage yard and marshalling area in behind here on building 1. Just to highlight a couple more things, that retaining wall that I again highlighted on the photo is along here. The retaining wall is actually off-site. It is a city infrastructure, although we will be looking to modify that. And we also have some retaining. This wall of the Coca-Cola building is acting as some retaining now, but it also extends eastward and westward from that. So that's an existing condition there. Our grade will ultimately be a little bit higher than that, and some additional retaining in this area here. Access talked about. Just a couple more notes on the parking. The surface parking area is sufficient to handle the square footage for light industrial use. We also have we're showing an underground parking structure beneath building 3, and We haven't committed to doing that as yet. There's the potential there, and we have geotechnical conditions in that area that we have yet to address. So there's certainly opportunity to get parking beneath the building, and from the ownership group, there's certainly advantage in doing that. But there's also a cost that needs to be considered. The reason I raise that, of course, is that, as I said, the surface parking that we provided does satisfy bylaw requirements. We have, I'll speak to the pedestrian movement. Actually, let me back up a minute and just talk about building configuration. Building 1 and Building 2 both have floor plates that relate quite well to street level. The floor beneath that, or level beneath that, is accessible from the lower portion of the site. So access is from the site, grading downward to a fairly level parking grade in here, and as I say, that accesses lower floor levels in both of those buildings. It's also working quite well in terms of pedestrian connectivity. Sort of starting at this point, we have connection to frontages of the building, street connections, ramping down, and again, interconnects through sidewalks and plaza areas to virtually all building frontages. Likewise, along Jordan Avenue, there's level access to Building 1. I'll sort of address some of the staff comments as I go along here. I don't overlook any. There was a comment about electric vehicle parking, and I'm glad that was brought to my attention. We don't seem to indicate any there, but we'll certainly get the charge stations installed in suitable locations. We do have bike racks. I think they're a little hard to see, but they're kind of scattered, and I think we have one per building. I believe there's one hiding somewhere around the Building 2. Lighting, we have some full lighting. There's one here. There's a couple along the back to illuminate the storage yard, and I believe there's one right here in the corner to ensure that our travel areas are well illuminated. Balance of site lighting will come from wall packs mounted on the building. Garbage, because we always like to talk about that. We have some garbage enclosures here. This is kind of the utilitarian area of the site. Loading for warehousing, as I mentioned, it's outdoor storage yard as well. So we have garbage enclosures at that point. I think there was a staff comment in there as well about trying to get one more centrally. I think our response to that is because these are largely warehouse uses. This one, I think, serves this end of the site quite well, or the two of them here serve this end of the site quite well. The other ones were our expectation at this point is that garbage would be contained within the buildings in loading areas. I'll just highlight, while I've got the site plan up here, the areas of variance. They're highlighted in red. There's a yard setback on Building 1, minor encroachment into front yard, and we have a couple of little points on Building 2, again because of lot configuration. These are just open up a little bit into front yard setback. Moving on, this is floor plan for Building 1. I don't think I have much to add about the floor plan, except again, this being the upper floor, direct connection to Jordan Avenue at this point. Anticipated use on the upper floor is largely office and administrative type uses. Lower floor, main entrance from parking lot, and this is intended as a showroom area and some warehousing that is adjacent to it. Building form and character, fairly contemporary kind of look to it. We're certainly punching up areas of the building where we have street presence, where we have public interest in the building, lots of glazing in the office and administrative areas. The The balance of the building is a little more utilitarian, but again, very clean, very contemporary kind of approach to it. And again, we've carried that language around the building on three sides. The easterly portion of the building, again, is associated with the outdoor storage and warehousing, access, all of those more service-related aspects of it. Finishes, and I might as well speak to them now. We've been pretty consistent with finishes on all three of the buildings. We're using the same material, the same color palette, essentially three materials. We're using metal cladding in two different colors. That's really the primary material, very prominent on most of the building. A little bit different, again, with the office areas where larger expanses of glass, incorporating well, you see the K2 logo right there. A lot of K2 product, because this is expected to be their showroom facility in Nanaimo. And that's complemented with some natural timber. I'll move through the other buildings here. This is building one, main floor being actually at the lower level. Again, mostly warehousing, but we do have entrances, loading bays coming directly off the parking area, and again, pedestrian access to that. Upper floors are partial and highlighted, as you can see, and again, here's our connections to the Jordan Most Star intersection and pedestrian links across the front of it to our parking node off to the side. As you can see, this is a little bit bigger building than building one, but again, it's the same kind of treatments. Canopies, again, over expanses of glass, flatter or low-sloped roofs over the bulkier warehousing components of it. Integrated signage. I'm not sure we'll have signage at all of these locations, but we're certainly showing locations where we can integrate signage into the architecture. Building 3. This is the parking level beneath Building 3. Access ramp comes from the parking area down below, and I think we house 24 cars, and there's long-term bike storage and building services that would be associated with that. Main floor plan, and this plan actually allows for some modest second story or mezzanine area within each. But again, it's varying sizes of CRUs and public plazas and accessed again directly off the parking lot. Exterior elevations for building 3. Again, same palette of materials. Just to highlight here is where we'll be accessing underground parking. Most our street edge, again, emphasis to glazing on the showroom component. Outside, in profile is the Coca-Cola building. So there's not a lot of our building that has exposure apart from this corner. And again, carry some of those treatments around the space of the building. A couple of site sections. This is through both Building 2 and Building 3. The dotted line represents the existing natural grade. And you can see how our buildings are relating fairly well to that. There's a little bit of cut and a little bit of fill. There's a retaining wall, again, along that south boundary in the Coca-Cola building that we need to get down to or below with foundation systems. And therein lies the potential to be doing that underground parking component. Site section B is through building 1. Again, the dotted line represents the existing grade conditions. It's this large quantity of fill in here that will ultimately be removed, and we wind up with a site grades that relate much better to pre-existing grade conditions. Again, you can just see the relationship between the lower floor showroom and parking lot entrances, and again, the relationship between upper floor and Jordan Avenue. A couple of streetscapes, just to put it in context. So there's our building 2, this is our building 1, site access drive aisle between the two of them. Distance is building 3. Along Mostar, I just wanted to talk about that alum block retaining wall. The red dotted line that we show here is actually the top of the walls is right now, and there's a point in here where it's actually quite high relative to street level. But the way we're grading the site and the way the building is integrated into the site, we're proposing to remove a fair bit of height from that wall, and follow the profile of Mostar, I think, much more effectively than what's there right now. I believe that was as high as it was to retain a structure there many years ago. Here we're keeping the retaining wall more or less intact. I think there may be opportunities, again, responding to a staff comment, maybe some opportunities here that we can lower it a bit more still. But I think that is kind of it. And I think I'm either free to answer questions now, or we can can pass this over to Brad Forth for to deal with the landscaping aspect of it.
I think let's go to Brad, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you.
Hi guys. So I'll try and share my screen. I think you probably put the landscape plan on yours, but
I can if you want me to bring it up.
Let's try. I'll see if I can share mine. Oh, you have to stop sharing yours though. Let's see if I can share mine. That didn't work.
We can see it, Brad.
Yep, working for us.
Yeah, okay. Okay, great. So then, can you see my cursor?
Yeah.
Sort of in the middle? Okay, great. So, as far as we'll explain the site work really quite well. I just want to start by saying that there have been quite a few engineering inputs on Jordan Avenue. In particular, the desire to actually what happens is there's a large grass boulevard that goes way out here and it's very wide and just grass, and what the engineering department wanted to have a different profile which pulled a lot closer to get the street widening, and then also they like a bike trail or bike lane that comes along through here, as well as which is grade separated from the sidewalk. So you can see that profile that came directly from the engineering department. We've also got this parking bay along here, which you can see, and a small grassy strip between the parking bay and the bike lane in that location. We're incorporating some street trees on Jordan Avenue on this grass boulevard area where we have space, so there's room for 4. And then we're also mirroring additional large trees that will match these on our site where we can in a back row. So at the corner it'll be nice articulate zigzag large trees, and then this tree highlights the entrance location. And then we've added 3 more of the same species of trees down here towards the end of the site above the surface the surface parking area down here. We incorporate sidewalk between the buildings, a rain garden element, which you can sort of see highlighted along here in a light blue color. And it kind of starts in concept from the corner of Building 1, and then it carries on over here. And then this road narrowing that happened here means we stop that rain garden about here. The rain garden will be basically quite rocky, rocky edges. It'll have river rock down the center, and it'll have some K2 stone weir elements. And again, the materials we'll use will all be a kind of complement to K2 stone. And coming around the corner, there's a little piece of rain garden as well, where this pathway will ramp down, and we'll have a little bit of a second rain garden along the corner of Jordan Avenue. And then coming back over to the corner of Building 1, my concept here is that we're going to have a bit of a water wall off of that K2 element that's on the corner of the building. It's spilling into a pond and actually being quite visually appealing from the entrance location or as you come along the sidewalk. And then this becomes a very important focal point element of the project, because as you enter into the project, you're looking at the side of Building 1, which steps down. And my intention of that is to have an exterior K2 stone display garden, if you will, with the waterfalls and weir stones and different kinds of K2 products like ledgestone walls. And at the bottom, there will be a precision cut K2 stone bench, all very heavy elements, but that when you come out of the showroom on the lower level, you can then walk up the sidewalk and then look at all these different products and see them in use in the real landscape, because a lot of these products, that's where they really shine, is in the landscape design element, not just building cladding. And then this, we've also highlighted the entrance location of the parking with secondary flowering trees, and these repeat in the notches of the building to create this kind of colorful and more detailed landscaping with shrubbery and ornamental grasses, and then these flowering trees, which are sort of highlighted in pink on the plan. And because this parking area will have, significant in and outgoing truck traffic, we've kept the profile of the trees, either pulled them back like this, or we kept them small so it's starting to interfere with the trailers and the turning motions of those vehicles. We've also incorporated elements of the special paving that we've done that highlights the front of the building. We've incorporated some of those elements into the hard surface areas for Building 3 so that we have a continuity of materials. There'll be unit pavers and some concrete sidewalks, and then also I've incorporated some large boulder elements up against the face of the building in these areas and in the corners to, again, pick up the K2 stone vocabulary, but also kind of just highlight elements that bring a little nature into here in a kind of a robust way. Everything meant to be heavy and not breakable in this area at all. I think we, on Mostar, where the wall is adjusted, I'm proposing a coniferous tree kind of buffer zone for a portion of this where our building is not visible. And I'm thinking that would create a kind of a nice evergreen edge here, as well as the corner of the lot down here. We have a little bit of space, and I thought I would create a conifer tree cluster that would complement the vegetation into this adjacent park area here and kind of give it a bit more evergreen buffer from the road. There will be a black vinyl coated chain link fence all along the south property line. And this part here will have a retaining wall inside, and we're going to need to put a guard on here, and I believe that Will showed on his plan a steel and timber fence that is in keeping with the building. And I guess that's the landscape plan.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Will, did
I think
you?
we've got
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got Scott Jensen with us too. I don't know, Scott, if you wanted to add anything in terms of the stormwater management.
Yeah, I don't think I have too much to add to that. Brad already kind of covered that pretty well there with the main stormwater feature on the site, just trying to tie into that rain garden feature around building 2. And basically trying to take advantage of landscaping and also pockets around the site, directing any runoff from pedestrian walkways and that kind of thing there where possible. And then the outflow of all of that will still go into a stormwater detention system kind of underneath the driveway to limit the flow rate of any of the water that overflows those natural systems and the rest of the site before it, will have a flow control manhole that then releases water into a storm sewer on Mostar. Yeah, I think that generally covers it.
Thanks, Scott.
There's also some exhibit sheets for landscape if anyone's interested in those, but maybe we're okay. If you want me to share them, I can.
I think, just noting the time, I think we're okay. If somebody has a question, they can ask. Do you have any more to present, Will, or is that?
No, I think that's it. I know that Brian is listening in, so I don't know if he's got anything that he wants to add, but I think that concludes our presentation.
No, I don't have anything to add. Thank you, Will.
Thanks, Brian.
Okay, thank you. I will check with the design panel members if anybody has any questions about the application for staff initially. I'm seeing lots of shaking heads. Okay, so I'll open it up to questions and comments to the applicant, starting with Steve.
Thanks, everyone. You hear me fine?
Yes.
Great. Thank you very much for the presentation. This property is well overdue on getting developed, and especially for that retaining wall, the elm block wall. Hopefully there's a continuation on the slag end of things, because it is a little bit of an eyesore for one of the major access routes into the Nanaimo. As for the buildings and the architecture and the knowing Hazelwood has done their main office quite well. I know this project's going to be very, very nice. I don't have any issues whatsoever with the layout or, of course, the variance as well. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Marie?
Yeah, thank you very much for a very clear and thorough presentation. Really appreciate that. All I have to say is I think it's a fantastic project. You're proposing a really handsome building that really suits that site. There's some really good thought put into fitting these buildings onto a rather unusual site, and you've done a great job. Good addition to the neighborhood. So I'm okay with the variances as well, and good luck. Thanks.
Thank you. Tony?
Yeah, thanks. I think it's a great design, a very clean, contemporary looking form of character that's going to put a lot of the rest of the industrial stuff nearby to shame, which is great. I really like the treatment of the site, both hard and soft landscaping and the consistency around it. I would perhaps echo the staff comment about adding a little glazing if possible to, I think it's the east elevation of building 1, but I don't see sort of a deal breaker on this. The rest of it is, looks good. The variances are extremely minor, and all they do is allow improvements to the design elements and massing. I would have liked, I guess, to see the K2 display wall that Brad described so eloquently. It sounds wonderful. And as long as it has some control over it, so it doesn't turn into a giant sample board, I think it would be a fantastic contribution to the site in general. So well done, everybody, and that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Kate?
I don't have any, I agree with what everyone has said. I first want to thank you, though it was a very clear presentation. I really appreciated that. And I really want to commend you on the site design of this project. I think you've done a great job having the buildings activate the edges so well and really enhancing that pedestrian experience on the edges. I think that's great. And my only comment, and I have no idea what you can do about this, is that this is the first project, well, I've been in panels that we've seen where a bike lane is going to be added in front or on the, just on the outside. It goes sidewalk, bike lane road, is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I don't know if the engineers will let you do anything, but it would be great. Like, I love it when when you're going along a bikeway and the material changes. Like, I could see a bit of that K2 stone just as a slight marker of, you know, passing by this stone industrial site. Might be kind of cool, but I don't know. I recognize you may not be allowed to do that. The city might not let you, but it would be nice.
I don't know yet what the city will let us do there, but I'm going to push the limits always to think of some neat texturing materials for the bike lane, and I guess we'll see what they're proposing. They pretty much proposed the trajectory and everything, so
even if it's like just a crossing across it, right? Like where you enter into the K2 building or something. Just something.
yeah,
That could be nice.
that would be cool for sure.
But I recognize that might not be possible. That's all.
We'll try.
Okay. But thank you very much. I think your whole team has done a great job.
Thanks, Kate. Tyler?
Thanks so much, everyone, for the presentation. Like everyone said, it was very thorough and well done. Charles, if you'll permit, I did actually have a question for staff, and I sort of missed that section when you asked. I'm just curious, under staff comments on the building design, it talks about section 2.2.12 of the OCP encouraging energy-efficient building design and green features in commercial buildings, and consider ways to support energy efficiency and sustainable design principles within the building and site design. I'm just wondering what was meant by that, because it is a sort of a...
We lost him in senses.
Tyler, I'm not sure if you can still hear us, but I think I get the gist of your question. So maybe I'll...
Oh, there it is.
Okay, can you hear us?
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm back now. Yeah.
Okay.
Did you hear the question?
I think most of it, maybe just the last few sentences we missed.
Sure. Okay, I'm just curious what the intention of that being included in there, what came to mind that provoked that comment to be inserted?
Yeah, I think it's a general comment that we'd like to add. And the idea is to try and get the developer or the applicant to show us what they're doing. So sometimes it's not obvious in the plans. It's not necessarily something that they have to do. It's just a policy that we have to encourage them to implement these things in the site and think about these things.
Okay, thank you. The only other thing is I would echo Tony's comments. It would have been nice to see what that potential unique landscape feature looked like, and I would have the same sort of fear that it becomes more of a commercial piece rather than this integrated piece, and it's sort of hard to comment on it without actually seeing it. But other than that, it's a great project.
Okay, thank you. I will echo all the comments. I don't really have anything more to add, except I am happy to see that the Allen Block wall is being reduced. Not eliminated, I understand, but reducing it is a good step in the right direction. And otherwise, I just echo all the other comments. I think it's actually a pleasure to see an application that is well thought out, well designed, and well presented. So it makes our job easier. Having said that, I'm...
Charles, I didn't get to speak yet.
Kevin, sorry I missed you. You're up in the corner there. Kevin, please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation, you guys. Very, very nice, polished presentation. I must say I was kind of surprised because when I received the package, I saw Brian and Brad, and I said, oh, great. And then I looked at the drawings, and I said, this is Will all over it. Will Nelson's project also. And sure enough, well, that's fair. Also, I must say I was surprised because at the last presentation that Brian made, Brad showed up with a beard, and this time Will shows up with a beard. I think it's the first time I've seen Will with a beard. I just hope that Brian at his next presentation doesn't have Victoria Draper on his team. Very nice presentation. I like the siding of the buildings. It's very similar, Will, to your project down the street, the City Tile project. The internal parking, the buildings out towards the street works very, very well. Form and character of the buildings are spot on. No real issues. I know staff had a comment about the east wall of buildings 1 and building 3. You could argue either way on that. I wouldn't put it in as a recommendation. If there is a building, maybe building 1 possibly, but I wouldn't put it in as a recommendation. The retaining wall, Brad, on Mostar, are you going to have plants that are going to cascade down the wall?
That's the thinking, trying to really minimize it. The idea of cutting it down in height is a big plus, but we can also put some cascading foliaster on that space so that it greens it out. That would be really, I think, would be the preference.
So there's a fence there, so it would have to be able to go through the fence, right? Or is the fence set back from the top of the wall?
Yeah, we'll set the fence back, and then we'll make sure we can get some good ground cover coming over, cascading over it.
Great. And are you providing, Brad, any benches to some of the patio areas?
Yeah, my thinking is to use some big pieces of K2 stone for natural feeling places to sit. I mean, we could also do some timber stuff too, but I was just sort of thinking, sometimes there's these large pieces of K2 stone that are quite flat, like bench-like, and I thought they would make kind of neat, informal, and very, robust industrial kind of feeling, to bring a little nature element in there that can't be damaged by, anyone really. So that's kind of where I was leaning.
That's awesome, perfect. I know there were some staff comments here that they seem very minor, but I know they were commenting possibly about having pedestrian access down to Mostar, but I would argue that I don't think you're going to really have any very little pedestrian access along a route from there, so I would definitely support against having an access there, and I much prefer what you've done with the landscape concept along that area. Also, they were talking about screening of the garbage enclosures, but I think the way they are located, I don't think you're going to really see them. The garbage for the building 1 has a sliding gate along there that would block any vehicles from going in there. So I don't think the garbage needs to be screened. Also, they make mention to some of the clear story windows that are up above being larger, but I feel that takes away from the light industrial feel of the buildings. They aren't really supposed to be meant to look like commercial buildings. They're supposed to look like light industrial. So I would think that you really don't have to worry about that. The only comment I would have or possible recommendation is the pedestrian circulation throughout the site is really good, but there really isn't a pedestrian link between building 1 and building 2. And whether or not, I guess if you do provide for the underground parking, you're going to have more than enough parking on the site, and whether or not there's a way to create a pedestrian link across there even if you need to possibly reduce the landscape islands, the two landscape islands there might be a way to get a link across there. I'm not sure your comments about that, Brad and Will.
I think, thanks, Kevin, actually, for your comments. I think in that particular location, it's very close to the public, the city sidewalk. And I can certainly have a look at it, though, and see if we can make a more direct connection there.
Yeah, it's very minor. I'm not putting it as a recommendation. I'm just going to point it out to you more than anything. Because if you do have a lot of extra parking, there's one way that you can do it. I do like those two landscape islands, and the way Brad has set up those trees to enter, I guess, invite you into the site is very successful, and I really don't want to take too much of that away because it does work very, very well. And aside from that, I fully support the variance. There's very little parts of the building that are being affected by that encroachment, and I think you've all done a very great job, so thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Sorry I skipped by you there. So what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing is I think we have sort of happy panel, and I don't think we have any recommendations. I think other than support for the variance, I think we have a motion that is accepted as presented with support for the variance. Does anybody have?
I would make.
Oh, go ahead.
I would make that motion unless I put it on the floor if I can get a second or then you can discuss it. If anybody wants to change it.
Seconded by Tyler. Does anybody have any comments or further discussion? I'm seeing lots of shaking heads, so I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you all. Thank you for your feedback. Appreciate it.
Okay, so I guess we have a changeover of attendees to virtual attendees.
Checking them out. They're gone.
And Kevin, I have to echo your comment. Will's still there, and now he's gone. I had no idea that was Will. Totally did not recognize him with the beard.
Funny, I've known him for many years, and I think it's the first time I've ever seen him with a beard. Not even a goatee or anything, a mustache.
Yeah.
Ready for the second one?
Are we good to go?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so again, I apologize, I don't have an agenda in front of me. So we have another application that Lainey is going to introduce. Oh, Lainey, again, okay, sorry. So please, go ahead.
Thank you. So the next application is for 478 McCleary Street. This is a development permit application, DP 001205 for Duplex located at 478 McCleary Street. The subject property is located on the north side of McCleary Street between Franklin Street and Albert Street. It is zoned R13 Old City Duplex Residential and is designated neighborhood in the official community plan. It falls within development permit area 8, Old City neighborhood, and the Old City plan applies. The Old City multiple family residential design guidelines also apply to the proposed development. There's one variance requested to increase the maximum building height from 7.75 meters to 8.75 meters, which is a variance of 1 meter.
Okay, thank you.
So we just have one presenter, I believe it's just Douglas Riddell, the applicant, and you can go ahead and unmute.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'll try to share my screen with you. I've come up with maybe an over-exuberant PowerPoint presentation. Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Now I've got to try things out of the way. Do you see my screen still?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Just a little bit about who we are first. I was visiting you folks virtually back in July with our Medea project. We're a home builder that built primarily in South Nanaimo. We build residential and develop land. We're quite active in the community with such things as being one of the only living wage employers in the construction industry. We're quite proud of our supporting Breakfast Club Canada and our professional affiliations, including BC Business, the BBB, Chamber of Commerce, CHBA, and then we've got probably all the certifications we can get from the CHBA, including things like the Master Residential Home Builder and Certified Residential. As discussed or introduced, we have an empty lot located in Cleary Street, which is between Franklin and Albert. In coming up with our design and looking at the design guidelines, we were quite active in touring, particularly the McCleary and the neighboring street Kennedy, for some inspiration and some understanding better what the neighborhood identity is. So the neighborhood itself has a mixture of early 1900s homes with infill in the 50s with sort of rancher type homes. Frankly speaking, the street itself is a little bit run down. Although certainly as in the rest of South Nanaimo in the last couple of years, the private home ownership has certainly increased, but we still have quite a mixed bag on the street, as you can see here. This is more housing directly across from the site. Again, some 1950s infill with not too much as far as architectural character, at least in my opinion. This is the site as it stands now, empty, with a derelict house on the right, and on the left, somebody is now doing quite an extensive renovation. Just to give you a little bit of feeling of the massing, I've taken the site plan and overlaid it on an aerial here. We have the alley in the back with a two-car garage. The front of the site is on McCleary and facing Mount Benson. So this is our material board. Talk a little bit more extensively about it in the next slide. We've got premium shingles, a 40-year guarantee. We use in all our buildings, we like to consider our design craftsman inspired, as with this design, and we use extensive wood trim in all our builds. This would include things like fascia, barge boards, gables, corners, doors, and windows, and we've had quite a bit of success using this wicker cafe trim color. For the horizontal siding, we've had great success with Sequoia Select. It's a premium grade siding. It's thicker than normal siding, and it's also, the pigmentation is deeper and casts and better, so it doesn't fade over time. So Sequoia has also come up with quite an innovative, impressive, in my opinion, shingle, vinyl cedar shingles that are almost indistinguishable from the real thing. Finally, we have board and batten. Although I'm a fan of Sequoia Select and horizontal vinyl siding, I'm not in the board and batten. So we feel we get a presentation of board and batten using hardy board or similar type of composite product. This is the color rendering from the street. So I think it's somewhat self-explanatory. We spent a lot of time in the gable peak area. I forgot to add in here my shadow boards, so there will be shadow boards. Within vinyl shakes, a shed roof here. Our windows always have the Craftsman-inspired grills or lights in them. Then just to add some more character and richness and detail, we've used dental molding and extensive use of belly bands, fluted columns, and skirt boards. And so the A, B, C, and these letters here correspond to the material board below. So if we take a quick tour around the rest of the building, we spent a lot of time and thought also on the two sides and the rear. This is the left-hand side facing west. Again, use of board and batten in the peak. Also, on the first floor, we have 9-foot ceiling. This is the view from the backyard with Unit A here and Unit B here. This peak was quite large, and we felt that just shingling it all would not be as attractive as the combination of board and batting, shingle, and outlookers. I should mention the cedar outlookers that we use are 24 inches high. They're rough cut and handmade, so they look pretty sharp in that way. And then this is the right-hand side facing east. Again, normally builders don't spend too much time thinking about the side of the building and its articulation, but here we have spent a fair amount of time and resources, money, to bolster up this design, which would include pretty nice detailing in both the gable area. This is the entrance here to Unit B, which is off the side yard. The landscape plan is presented here. This is a residential duplex. One of the key things I think is important is there are no common areas. And so each unit has its own private fenced area, and they are responsible, of course, for maintenance and further developing the landscape as they see fit. So we took a minimalist approach for landscaping for that particular reason. So to help with the pictorial, we've also lined up what the actual trees and plants look like in relationship to the symbols back on the landscaping plan. Staff presented us with 8 recommendations, and I just wanted to quickly go through each of them, and I think also doing that will give you a better idea, again, of our total vision and design for this project. So the design guidelines were, as you know, commissioned to as guidelines. One of the things that the guidelines does point out is this whole residential design guideline is encouraging densification in projects like ours and duplex. Within that, we understand the design though should still have a distinctive residential expression, which I think is important in addressing one of the staff concerns later in this presentation. And lastly, I think, again, at this point it's important to remember to reflect the essential character of the area. So we worked hard to fit into the area, but not to be over top. As part of being mindful of the design guidelines, I felt that as a builder and dealing with the city and numerous projects, I came across this paragraph that I thought was interesting and I just wanted to share with you. Home builders, designers, and city staff should acknowledge that excessive design requests hurt affordability. And in this case, our project is a duplex and it is geared towards lower income households. So design regulations are supposed to ensure the health, safety, welfare of its residents, but superficially and excessive rules that price lower and moderate income families out of the housing market should not be prioritized over the need to address our housing affordability here in the Nine. So again, we went into the neighborhood, took our inspiration from the neighborhood, but certainly didn't want to go over the top of creating something that was so fancy was out of place. So staff comment on the first one was the use of vinyl siding. I'd like to note that these guidelines were established in 1990, and vinyl siding, I think most would recognize, has come a long way. It's similar to vinyl flooring. Years ago, vinyl flooring had a very poor reputation, and actually we're building a $2 million house now where the owner has requested this higher performance vinyl flooring. And we're finding the same type of evolution in vinyl siding. So this is one of the houses that we did last year. This is the vinyl siding of Sequoia Select. A couple other interesting things about vinyl siding is it's come a long way as far as its carbon footprint, and I presented in our application actually some green carbon footprint data comparing vinyl siding to composite boards such as Hardy, and it turns out that vinyl is considered a greener product. To help on our overall design, however, we still like to complement the use of vinyl with extensive wood trim. And we also, you can see in this picture, not very many people talk about the soffits, but we don't use the perforated soffits. We use a faux cedar faucet soffits where the venting is hidden on the sides. So it gives it a very nice cedar look appearance. Staff comment 2 was pedestrian pathway, highlighted here in this yellow arrow. The staff felt that we should be moving the pathway over to the right. Again, our thought here was in our design rationale, there is no common area and that each unit has its own private fence. Lastly, that this particular unit, Unit B, has already been pre-sold, and the customer felt that they basically picked the location of the sidewalk as it is now. Staff comments number 3, staging the entrance. The staff considered staging the entrances in order to better express individual units. Our design rationale actually was to de-emphasize that it was a duplex. And coming back to the point I made earlier, the design guidelines encourages distinct residential expression. So we felt that staggering the entrances more would only highlight that it's a duplex. And what we were trying to achieve is highlight it as a residential single-family dwelling. Staff comment 4 was consider larger, more prominent ornamental heritage features within gable peaks. So I went around the neighborhood and to give you what is represented in the neighborhood gable peaks today, we have this example, and this example. So looking at what we've proposed, again, I think we've taken a combination of what the inspiration we received from what's out there, and that's the combination of the cedar shapes, the cedar outlookers, vinyl shapes, cedar outlookers, and the genteel molding. So this is a view of the front of the house, left side, and our peak detail. Back of the house with again, I thought that we came up with a creative solution with the board and batting to help break up that large peak. And then on the right-hand side, again, genteel molding, board and batting, and the use of cedar outlooks. Staff comment number 5 was consider enclosing the porch of Unit A with a lower railing similar to Unit B. I've highlighted Unit B here with the arrow and Unit A. The reason we put a railing around Unit B was due to the drop in elevation as it slopes down there. So we had a safety concern, and that's why the railing was installed. In Unit A, it's actually a very flat entrance with no incline at all. And we thought actually adding a railing to the other unit would highlight again that it's a 2-unit residence, where we wanted to sort of reinforce that single residence appearance. And lastly, adding the railing when there's no safety concern, I think that's unnecessary cost that again impacts our affordability. Staff comment number 6 was remove ornamental rock around the building. We did this similar design, which is this number 5 here. You can see we basically have 5 feet from the building to set back to the next property. Staff recommended that we put shrubs or grass in there. The reason they did that is in the design guidelines, there is a section here that says that the use of rock and bark and stone is discouraged. I'd like to point out, though, that the guideline also says invisible areas. And what we're proposing is basically maintenance issues along the side of the buildings and running down the fence line. And these areas that are signified a number 5 with the use of rock won't be visible or would be hardly visible from the street. Staff comment number 7 was consider more trees. Again, this is where I wanted to recognize that this is not a multifamily of larger units where it's stratified in common areas. So this is a side-by-side duplex with no common areas. And we felt that doing minimal landscaping and letting the homeowners ultimately decide what they wanted to do wasn't detrimental to the design. The staff also suggested that there would be a need, suggested a creation of a formal edge along the street with shrubbery. I think that the fencing that we are proposing would achieve the same thing. Comment number 8 is the last one. Staff considered a more detailed fence along the front lot line with low ornamental or accent lighting. This is an example of our typical fencing detailing, and I'm not quite sure what we can do more in detailing of the fence than this, except going to a more expensive product like stone and concrete. The staff also asked us to consider accent lighting, and after extensive tour of the nearby neighborhood, we could find a few examples of accent lighting in the single-family neighborhood. So we felt that that would fit into the character of the houses around us. So that's my conclusion of my PowerPoint presentation, and I'll turn it back to you folks.
Thank you. Okay, I will do my usual thing and ask panel members, excuse me, if anybody has any questions of staff. Kevin?
Yeah, quick question regarding the variance. There's a height variance of 1 meter, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And I know that that's the cutoff line. I believe that a variance has to go to council. Is it 1 meter or does it have to be under 1 meter?
It's 1 meter and over.
It's 1 meter and over, so this would have to go through council.
Over 1 meter. Over 1 meter, sorry, so I'm good.
Over 1 meter? Okay, so this would not have to go through council.
This could be delegated, that's right. It doesn't need to be.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Tony?
I just have a question. I'm fairly new to this panel, but I've sat on a lot of design panels. The first time I've ever seen a project of this size before a design panel. Is this standard practice in Nanaimo that anything bigger than a single-family house come to advisory design panel? If it's a long and complicated answer, we can talk after the meeting or tomorrow, it doesn't matter, but
this project is in DPA Area 8, which is an old city. So the guidelines in the OCP say any multi-family needs to go through a development permit, and of course you go through the DAP process as well. So multi-family is defined as 2 or more units. So anything above a single family.
Okay, any other questions? I have one, actually. Is there a height limitation on the fence on the front property line?
There is. It's 4 feet, so 1.2 meters.
4 feet. So the picture that we saw is actually higher than what would be there?
It's hard to tell.
I'll ask the applicant.
Yeah.
Okay. I will now open it up to panel members for questions and comments, and because I forgot it last time, I'm going to go Kevin first.
Yay, you didn't forget me this time. Thanks, Charles. Yeah, thanks for the presentation. When I first looked at this project, I just wish that, I'm not sure what will ever be done, but I really feel that this should be a zoning that would accommodate fourplexes. The property, and this property is so large, it could easily situate 4 much smaller units on it that are more affordable. That's just something I guess I'd put in there, just maybe the planning department can start looking at ways to consider areas like this for a little bit higher density, because these are going to be, 2,000, pretty much over 2,000 square foot units that are going to be fairly expensive, and I wouldn't be calling these affordable, but all in all, I think you did very well with the siding of the buildings. I like that you kind of pushed it a little bit over to the high side. The forming character, overall, I'm fairly satisfied with it. You've done well to articulate the building on all 4 sides, which I was happy with. One thing that I would recommend is on the front of the building, the unit A side, that the master bedroom in unit A on the 2nd floor, you have that gable defining that particular area, but it's all one plane with unit B, so I would strongly recommend that you cantilever out unit A at least 1.5 feet or so you can get a solid edge there to define the gable. And I'm not sure if you thought about that, Doug, or if you want to comment on that. You see what I'm getting?
I guess it comes like, I would agree with you that it would add some more articulation. I guess it comes back to one of my opening comments about maintaining or achieving the character of the neighborhood while watching costs. So I agree that would be an addition, an attractive one. But is that necessary to comply with the form and character of the neighborhood currently?
Well, I think
again, we would be adding significant costs.
Yeah, I don't think it's adding significant costs if you're really only adding on 1.5 feet of a room that's a minimal width. But I think what concerns me a little bit is the wall massing of that particular plane over the area of the building, and ways to reduce that massing. And I think that by punching that out a little bit, even a foot to get a gutter line, like right now your gutter line that comes down over unit B is going to end abruptly without change in direction of the barge board like it does on the other side of unit A. And it would just just make it feel more uniform and help to break up that wall massing is what I'm recommending. So I like how you varied the windows on the front of the building, that they're not symmetrical. And I also like how you change the direction of the roof for the entranceway of Unit B, so it's not the same as Unit A. The thing I've always never really cared about with duplexes, quite often they are symmetrical, and anything that you can do to vary that is usually very successful. So I think what you did on the front elevation works very well. The vinyl siding, for most of it, you're using purple 3, is that right?
Frankly, I don't know what the technical name is. I just use Sequoia Select.
Yeah, as long as you're not, like with vinyl, I always find even some of the better products, unless it's a foam back vinyl that has the backing on it, the more exposure you have, once you get up beyond about 4 inches or so, you get that curve to it. And it's something that just doesn't come off very well. So if you are using better vinyl products, like you did show in that picture, I will support that. Those have to go to any sort of concrete composite board. The garage, the depth at 19 feet is bare minimum. I think you have easily the room on a site to make it deeper, and I would strongly encourage that, because so even making it 22 feet deep or making it deeper, I know there's a cost factor, but I was even wondering why you didn't consider a 4-car garage instead of a 2-car garage. And if it's budget, just say budget. But again, these units aren't going to be considered affordable. I think it's something that people are going to buy because they're desirable and they want a bigger house. So, and was there a reason why you didn't go 4-car garage, or was it strictly just that?
We're building about 15 homes a year in South Nanaimo, and there's, generally speaking, people would rather pay $10,000 less than have a single-car garage than $10,000 than have a house.
That's interesting.
The majority of our single-family homes with suites are now single-car garages.
So that's suites. With suites, yeah. Where this is a 2,000, each unit is about 2,000 square feet. Our single-family with suites are typically 2,800 square feet plus garage. So the preference, we're a spec home builder. And the preference we have found is people are gravitating towards single-car garage. Yeah, that's funny. I sell home plans, and I haven't heard that. So, and duplexes. I sell duplex plans as well. On the garage on the lane side, you're showing a V-shaped roof coming down, the 2A12 roof, and then the roof that runs from front to back is going to come down as well. How are you going to drain that? There's no area for a gutter there. I'm not sure how you can do that. It's a detail that, in my opinion, doesn't work. And I was curious as to whether or not you had a detail for that. Because you might have to consider an option to something different on that.
I'm sorry, I can't comment. I either missed that or not quite sure how that would be addressed.
Yeah, it's just something I'll put in there. I would recommend that you change that somehow. I'm not sure what the option would be. I think for how many people are going to see that, I think you're just better off eliminating those 2 gables and just running the gutter across it and just making it all a hip roof. Aside from that, the variant, it's a very easy fix to run a dual roof slope on that roof. You can keep all the front and rear facing roofs at 812 and lower the pitch of the roof that runs from front to back, which is the highest roof, to a 7 or a 6 to get it under height. Even though if we support it, it's not a big deal, but it could reduce some of your roofing material as well. I won't put in that as a recommendation, but I feel that that's an easy fix to eliminate having to ask for a variance, and it could reduce some of your roofing material.
Sorry, what was that suggestion again?
A dual roof slope. So the roof that runs from front to back, which is the highest roof pitch, you reduce the slope of that to a 7 or a 6.5, whatever it would take to get under height, and you leave all the front and rear facing roofs an 8/12. It's very common in residential construction. It's an easy way to get it under height and reduce some of the roof massing, and really from a pedestrian line of sight. There's a lot of roof there, and you probably wouldn't even notice that if you decide to change that. But it's called a dual roof slope, and roof trusses can calculate it very easily to get under height.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Is there a storm connection on the site for storm sewer?
I don't know.
Does the city staff know that?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, because quite often a lot of neighborhoods don't, and I think there's a great opportunity because of the slope of this site to look at a stormwater management plan and a rain garden, a swale to come down into the front right-hand corner, the lowest point, to deal with water, and that's something that you're probably going to have to address because they might allow you to use splash pads or something to deal with it, with a lot of the roof water runoff, but a building of this size and massing is something that you're going to probably have to deal with, and you might have to hire a civil engineer to deal with that. But aside from that, my biggest concern really is the landscape concept. To me, it is incomplete. I can go on with my concerns that I have, but I really feel that the landscape concept needs to be looked at by preferably a landscape architect. There's a lot of hard edges. The fence that runs down the middle of the front yard, you probably would never really see that. You're probably better with a landscape buffer. There's a lot of hard edges. I won't go into it a lot, but I really feel that the landscape concept needs to be determined. But other than that, I think you're well on your way with forming character. Just those comments that I mentioned about the roof, there's ways you can lower that, the garage roof, and also that bedroom, master bedroom unit A, bringing that out to create a better edge for that gable. Those are really my only concerns. So thank you for the presentation.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. Marie.
Okay, thanks, Doug. I want to start off by just saying I really appreciate the fact that you've put some thought into the character of the building in that particular neighborhood. I think your design does help to reinvigorate the historical character of the neighborhood, which is, of course, in decline or mixed in that neighborhood. So I really appreciate the fact that you've made that effort to address those things. And I also appreciated your discussion of the different staff comments, in particular some of the things they're wanting you to do to the exterior, which I think, again, in the context of it being basically two single-family homes on one lot and trying to keep costs and so on, I think we have to also consider those things. So I think even if vinyl siding works, if it's good quality, as Kevin notes, then I think that's an option we have to look at today and consider, in essence, the purchasers of those homes. I'd say my only comment on the character that the staff brought up was the railings on the front. Now I realize that you're trying to not make it look like a duplex, but I think it's going to be really hard not to distinguish it as a duplex. Like I like the asymmetrical quality because when you first approach the house, you don't see it as a duplex. But I think you also have to be not embarrassed to emphasize it as a duplex. So you've already got two sidewalks running up to it and so on to the porches. So anybody who walks along the street is going to see the duplex. So I think that idea of the railing on the front would actually just help to balance that, wouldn't disrupt it. I think that's one one suggestion I thought the staff made that I liked on that, just as a sort of an aesthetic character. But in terms of adding more things to the gable and so on, I think your design is just fine the way it is, and it doesn't need that at all. I'd say the only area where it does need some work, and Kevin's brought that up, is in the landscape. But again, I'm a little hesitant to sort of make that a recommendation, because I think, again, these are like two-family homes where you're going to have two purchasers. It's like they bought their own home and they will want some choices in how that's done and how much money is spent. So by adding all sorts of extra lighting, fancy fencing, and special landscaping, you're adding to that cost, and that's going to be something the homeowner is going to have to think of. So I'm a little hesitant to see that as a recommendation in this particular case. So I'd also like to say I'm happy to see a family-sized home. I guess sitting on this panel now for just over a year, I think. I can't remember how long. We're looking at a lot of apartments and townhouses that are touted as family homes, and they're often very small. And I think, well, what kind of family? One child, two children? Anybody with any number of kids, I think the square footage of these places they're adequate, and you're good. And instead of trying to squeeze people into 900 square feet, you're offering two homes instead of one on a single city lot in a neighborhood that's I think over the next few years will be reinvigorated with people renovating and new houses coming in and infills and so on. So I think it's a suitable design, and there's, the architects in this panel might have some, like Kevin will have some comments in terms of the actual structure and certain really have to think about building, which I won't add to, but thank you.
Thanks, Marie. Tyler?
Thanks, Charles, and thanks so much for the presentation. That was very thorough. Two very thorough presentations tonight, which is great. I would comment or echo a lot of what Marie said there. Generally, how I feel. The one thing I would say though is I would tend to like to see the embracing of the duplex rather than maybe turning away from it. And I'm not an architect or a housing designer by any means, but I just wonder if the building itself might be more attractive if on the unit either railing, no railing, I don't really mind, but if the actual gable was oriented towards the street, it would just be more attractive building, and just embracing that it's a duplex and not shying away from it. That would be my only real comment. One thing I do think is that the pathway in the back does make sense where it is a straight line. I think moving it might produce kind of an odd scenario, and people tend to walk from point A to point B regardless where you put the path. So I think the path makes sense where it is. Other than that, I think maybe some. I'd be curious to see what Kate might have to say around the landscaping. I do think some of that might be. I think there might be some solutions there which aren't necessarily additions to cost, and just or much addition to cost, might just be some design elements that could sort of improve the landscaping of the site. But other than that, I think it's a good project that I would welcome to the neighborhood, and I do appreciate the effort to try to integrate the housing type into the existing.
But Tyler, if I could just circle back with you, my understanding is the guidelines are asking us to make our designs look like they're single-family home, and they're trying to stay away from asymmetrical design. So yeah, that's why we presented that.
I did read that too, and I'm not sure if that's the best choice. But like I said, I'm not an architect or a housing designer. Just sort of when I looked at that, I thought. I've seen similar type things in other houses that have been done in the area, and it always stands out to me as it just stands out in not a positive way.
And as far concerning the landscape, again, I know this is bare bones, but I bring it back to the fact that these are really single-family homes or duplexes that normally wouldn't be required to go through this, except that we're in the old city corridor. But I wanted to be conscious of not superimposing a landscape design that may not fit with many young families, for example. So trying to give the families the ability to design their own private spaces like that was important in this case. If it was common areas, I would have a completely different opinion.
I get that it's an odd scenario. I do think it's an odd scenario going through this process for Duplex.
Okay, thanks, Tyler. Kate?
Great. Thank you as well for your presentation and the thoroughness of it. I really appreciate that. I don't think I need to comment on your architecture. There's been enough comments, so I'll just focus on the landscape. Here's what I think. You have an opportunity to provide a really great space here for someone to buy, and I think because it's a privilege to build anywhere in the city, and you're building in an area that has guidelines and that has triggered you to come through this panel, and so I do think it's important for you to address the guidelines and the forming character as everything, as in every project that comes through. And I understand that, yes, you're selling them as single-family units and you want to leave the landscape open for that homeowner to put their own ideas into it. But I think the risk is too great of nothing being done. And because I can, here at the panel, request a better landscape plan, I will, because we may end up with this plague we're seeing everywhere in the Imo of rock lawns. And I would just hate to have that happen. And so I don't think this landscape is adequate enough. I think people want to buy a place that's already thought through in every aspect, and that doesn't mean putting plants over the whole area. So I agree with the city's comments that you need more trees, you need a more thoughtful landscape plan, and that doesn't have to be expensive, and landscape is not the expense. Landscape is adding value to this property, this land, the productivity of this land, and the neighborhood, and you're developing this property and you're guiding the neighbors in how this community is going to evolve, and that's why I think you have to do the best you can. So I don't really plan to be a lecturer, but now I'm lecturing. And so I agree with Kevin. I'd like to see a proper landscape plan. And it doesn't have to be fancy and expensive. I can think of many ways to do it very affordable, that is very attractive and appealing, and not high maintenance to any person buying this house. That's all.
Okay. Thank you, Kate. Tony?
Thank you. I guess I have a question. I think, first of all, that the applicant has done a remarkably consistently thoughtful, detailed design to produce what's kind of looks like a heritage house. The intent of fitting in with the neighborhood. I'm not as familiar with that exact neighborhood as perhaps others are, certainly not the applicant. They spend a lot of time looking at the houses, photographing them, etc. But the houses that are there range over, more or less a century. They start in the 1900s and then they go in the 10s and 20s and 50s and whatever. Now we're at 2020, and I guess to me what perhaps might be always transitioning, and they go over hundreds and hundreds of years, I guess, from now till whenever. And that's evident in the variety of houses that are existing there. So instead of choosing a heritage look that, looks like it's from somewhere in the last century, I guess my question for the developer, the applicant, would be, did you consider, with maybe a pitched roof, a more contemporary design, more reflective of the transition that this whole area is going through from the 1900s to today and beyond? And if you did a more contemporary design, quite frankly, you could probably do it a lot cheaper than with all the exotic detailing and brackets and dentals and stuff that you put on this one. So it's a question I'd just like your take on. You're muted, sir.
That's a great question. I'm very glad you asked it. I have to say, as a developer and a home builder, I'm quite discouraged about having to go through this process for a place like Cleary that's clearly a neighborhood in decline. We're going through this because the city's requirement that there's these old city guidelines. So we're here with this design because the city has prescribed that in the guidelines for that area. So you can imagine that the development permit process that we're doing now for this duplex is almost the same as a high-rise or multifamily. So the cost, there's significant costs of time and money for a small builder to spend this much time on a duplex, and it really would, in my opinion, it discourages builders from building duplexes in the old city because of these extra costs and expense and quite rigid standards for design.
So you're saying that the design guidelines actually prescribe using the kind of detailing that you...
Absolutely. Absolutely.
They're not more...
Well, staff has a different opinion on that, but there's a whole booklet called...
Fair enough. Thank you. That's really my only comment. Other things have been talked about, but I just wanted to keep a very broad woman character perspective myself. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Tony. And Steve?
Thanks, Doug. Thank you very much for your presentation. I feel like I'm hearing a bunch of different things here. Being that I'm a developer, I can't help but feel Doug's pain right now because of the process that he has to go through. This is essentially doing a multifamily. The timeline has been, I'm guessing, close to 6 months. The amount of money that's invested in on Doug's part, and then again going into the details that we're diving into from a design advisory panel standpoint. Kate, you have valid points with landscaping, but what I'm trying to say is there are a multitude of duplex properties in the city of Nanaimo that don't go through this stringent of a process. And I see an awful lot of landscaping of single-family and duplex lots that are absolutely horrid, or they don't get landscaped. So it's a very tough thing. We had one about, the last one that we had was about a year and a half ago. Similar situation, I think it was a fourplex, if I'm not mistaken. And it caught the developer, the builder just wanted to build houses. And I don't think this is any different than Doug. He's trying to do a spec build that's affordable in an area that is really needed. This is a prime example of why developers or builders are not going leave Nanaimo because they have to go through this process. So that's my soapbox situation for here. It's probably offside and maybe off the design advisory panel because of it, but at the same time, it needs to be said. We can't have affordable housing in a crisis that we're going through when you have to go through a 6-month process to get there. The carrying costs would be absolutely crippling for a small builder, let alone even Doug in doing 12 to 16 units. It's still crippling for those carrying costs and the added cost to make a profit, or hopefully make a profit. So as for the landscape and the look and feel of the house, it's all great. It's more detail than a lot of builds that are going on in Nanaimo these days. Okay, sorry for ranting here. Thank you very much, Doug. Appreciate it.
Okay, thanks, Steve. So I'm seeing hands being raised, various hands being raised, and I think probably the best course of action at this point is to have a discussion around some of these points that have been raised, and potentially do that in the context of a motion, because I don't quite know exactly. I don't know exactly where this conversation may go, and I think we need to have it, but we should have it in the context of a motion. To do that, I've heard a number of, I've heard almost everyone who's spoken, almost everyone, referring to the landscape, and Kate specifically referring to the desire, Kate and Kevin, desire to have a landscape plan presented. And then there's a number of points, Kevin, that you raised that you indicated, you would see as recommendations. I'm wondering if we should, I don't know how we do it without a motion, but how we get, I think the fundamental question is the landscape plan issue, and does that constitute a return to design panel, or is it something that is a recommendation and it is dealt with at the staff level? So maybe I can, before we do a motion, we ask that question.
I'll let Kate jump in first on that. I'm not sure if we need to have a landscape architect, but this doesn't look like it's prepared by somebody who has a real good knowledge of landscape components, and especially with a sloped site like this too. And like what I said regarding storm drainage, we don't know if there's storm connections and how they're going to deal with stormwater, whether or not there's an opportunity for a swale, and whether or not they're going to have a drainage pit. All that we don't know, but I still feel that the landscape drawing is incomplete.
Kevin, in regards to the drainage, in my experience in South Nanaimo, when there isn't a storm drainage, that's brought up in the building permit process, and staff give us marching orders on how to deal with that. And then we bring somebody like Lukovic in to help us with that. But because we're not at the building permit design stage yet, so that's why I can't definitively answer that question now.
Tyler?
Yeah, I was going to say that I didn't mind expressing that I think there can be some improvements, but I don't think that under any condition I'm going to support a recommendation, because I agree with Steve fully on this, that for a duplex, the process here is extremely onerous, and you know what, if this was uniform across the city, well then so be it, and then everybody's playing by the same rules, but I think it's highly problematic for a few reasons, even though it's here. I'm comfortable if we get some suggestions for consideration, but if there's anything more than that, I think it can't.
I agree with that.
Okay.
I just want to know, all of you who work in design, are we going to, yeah, I agree, it's a duplex, this is like a process that doesn't seem to make sense, but it does fall into the downtown design guidelines, and those exist for a reason, to preserve or to encourage a certain type of design character. So if I'm not interested in it coming back either, but I don't see enough effort made on this project's part to consider the importance the landscape plays in all development. But I just most importantly want to say, do we allow builders to dictate the character then? Even if we think the process is too cumbersome for the scale of building. I'm just posing that because these guidelines exist because there was a desire to help these lands develop. And where this house is on the prairie is so close to some buildings that have really been kept up and are very, have a big value. So you can see that these buildings are going to improve. This neighborhood is going to improve. But if we have to sort of decide what kind of standards we're going to have these properties meet, or I don't know. I don't understand the point of.
Could I just make a comment, or and I'll ask Doug. From your perspective, have you done any projects that have a landscape architect or development that is pre-required, or are all your properties under a spec build, or just you buy property, you build a house, you do the landscaping, and move on?
We have two sides of our business. I was in front of the panel about 3 months ago for Medea and our townhouse project. There we used a landscape architect very extensively.
Right.
In our single-family homes, though, there is a strong preference by all homeowners to dictate their own landscape profile. The landscape that I put forward does have complete grass on it. It does have trees, and it does have some shrubbery. But I didn't want to superimpose extra plantings when a family may want a usable backyard for soccer, for example. And so I just didn't want to override the preference of the individual owner on what is considered non-common property, non-common property. If there was common areas, I would have a very different approach on it.
Yeah, that's the issue with, and Kate, you're absolutely right. It falls under a design advisor or design guideline, and it should be followed accordingly. I agree with that, but Doug's also right too, where it's tough from a resale point of view, me being the developer or the builder as well. You're trying to cater to what is sellable. We're in no man's land, I guess, is the best way everybody can agree with this. It only happens every now and again from what I've seen, but it's a tough one regardless.
I wouldn't have a problem if I thought the plant selections that were there made sense. I just don't even find they make that much sense, and I don't even want to go there, but that's the truth. I think, too, you have an opportunity to guide people and homeowners in a different, in a landscape aesthetic that means, like, this is an opportunity in my mind to present a property that has landscape value, and you're selling that as well. And I think the homeowner would appreciate that and or be influenced by that in a positive way. But by not doing landscape, you're implying it doesn't need to
I know what I'm saying based on our selling 15 spec homes a year. That is the customer's strong preference to be in control of their own landscape plan.
And we get rock lawns.
Okay.
Well, in this case, as you'll see, we do have a lawn designated, so there would be no rock there. We have clearly shown that we are grassing the areas with some accent trees and picked a small amount of plants because we're using it as a retaining wall. But people have a very strong preference in their own private property what they want for plants. So that's our experience being spec home built.
Are single-family homes in the, when they're built as an infill in the old city, are they required to go through this procedure?
No, they are not.
So they don't have to have a landscape plan, they don't have to go through anything?
No, and Caleb Horn actually brought up that he felt that maybe the landscape plan is not required for a duplex. I followed up with him again for clarity on that yesterday, but I haven't heard back from him.
Yeah, I see a duplex as two single-family homes. It's like you say, there's no shared common area, and I agree with you. If it's common area, then we've got to think of that, and there's sort of shared property rights and responsibilities. With a duplex, it just happens to be a house that's attached. I mean, anyway, that's my take on it.
I'm going to take prerogative as chair. I'm going to put forward a motion, and we can debate it and discuss it, but I would like to see where it goes, because I'm kind of trying to gauge the temperature of the room here. And this conversation could go on for a very long time, and I think we need to call a question on it. So I'm going to put forward a motion, and I'll explain why after I put it forward. My motion would be to accept the application as presented with support for the variance and no recommendations. Do I have a second? Okay, Tony? Thank you. And I'll explain why. When I first saw this application, similar to the previous application, I was quite impressed with the effort that had gone into following the design guidelines for Old Town for, as we discussed, not a very big project. Often we see projects that completely ignore. I remember Marie, at one panel, you talked about how they didn't even look at the design guidelines. Like, it was so contemporary, it was driving you crazy. And the design guidelines are, I'm not going to say they're outdated, but they go back a ways, and they were crafted with a very particular intent. And they're very suited to this type of project, and they're very difficult to do on a large multifamily project because they ask for the same thing of both types of buildings. So when we get these large 4, 5, 6-story buildings in, those design guidelines still want them to have gables and all this detailing on them, and that's just not appropriate for those building types, but it is for this building type. So when I saw this application, I like it's all been said already, the asymmetry, the attention to detail, I think it's been very well done. It's in a very challenging neighborhood, and even though the landscaping isn't perfect or ideal, it's definitely a step up from what's there, and it does allow that flexibility for the homeowner to do their thing. And most of it's behind a fence. I was surprised when I found out that there was a big fence along the front of the property because I thought that would be open. So anyway, my reasons for putting this motion to accept as presented are, I think this is a good project for the neighborhood. It's been well crafted, and I agree with the presenter that layering too many things on this project could jeopardize it, and it doesn't seem fair to do that to this project when the guy next door can build a single family house and not have to talk to anybody. So that's my reason for putting the motion forward. Anybody else? Kevin?
Yeah, I would just say that I did have some minor concerns with the forming character. Like what I said, the garage, I believe, at 19 feet isn't deep enough. By making it deeper, not only could they accommodate a deeper vehicle, they could also put a workbench in there. There's a lot of value to that. And also the V roof at the back that they have, the gables coming down. I think that's a detail that will fail. And my only other one was regarding the bringing out of Unit A master bedroom to create a stronger gable feel on the front. Those are the three forming characters that I have, and I would like to see those in there. And if anybody else supports that, I would like to see that as a friendly amendment.
Okay. Any friendly amendment support? Seconder? No. Okay.
There's only 3 trees on this whole site. That's all that's being proposed. That's all I want to say. That's good enough?
Well, in my opinion, and again, I'm kind of siding with others who've mentioned this, but I think it is good enough because it's an interim step, and the owners who buy these properties will enhance that landscape as they see fit.
I accept, I'm not going to be supporting the motion, but I accept that the panel will, and I think, yeah, I just wanted to say that I think every opportunity is an opportunity to improve, not just meet, and I think there's always an opportunity to improve our spaces, and I believe the builder has opportunity to improve the space by doing a better landscape plan, and that gives insurance it will be done. If it's left up to the homeowner, there's no insurance. That's all. Anyway,
Okay. Any other?
Yeah, I would just jump in and say that I would not be supporting this motion as well.
Okay. Any other comments or questions or discussion? Tyler?
I would, this is where I'm a little bit torn, because I would support a statement around considering additions to the landscape. It's just, I'm not prepared to say, bring back a landscape plan to the panel. I think there's no problem in providing some direction on the design. You know, it is what it is. It's here before us. That's the process. It's just, I'm cognizant of that anybody could come along and build a single-family dwelling on that property. But I think there's nothing wrong with the panel in giving suggestions about how the project may be. A good project can always be improved. We all know that, so I don't think there's any problem giving suggestions to Doug. And I think if he wants to see the project be successful too, he'll consider them and then go from there. So I would support additional recommendations around if they're out there, and I would defer to those that have more experience.
The city staff made the comment about increasing the number of trees. Could we have that as a recommendation? And I think trees, they are the foundation of the landscape, and then it sets the stage for the homeowner. If I'm going to take a more positive attitude here, can we make that recommendation?
Yeah, and if there are those recommendations can be added for sure if everybody basically everybody agrees. So did you, Tyler, want to make a recommendation for consider?
Yes, I would propose an amendment to the recommendation that the applicant consider adding more trees and landscape features to the project.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on that one? Okay, all in favor of that call for friendly amendment, the adding of that recommendation? Okay, perfect.
Through the chair, I would like to have clarification. We have gone back and forth now a little bit. I was trying to follow along, as Kevin was mentioning, he had 2 or 3 that he wanted to add. We had been discussing the landscape plan. Now we're adding the landscape plan. What's back?
So we're adding a recommendation,
To consider more trees.
To consider more trees and
landscape features to the property.
Yes, but that is the only recommendation that's been added.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, having said that, done that, any more discussion on the main motion as amended with the consideration for trees and landscaping? Seeing none, did we have support for the height variance in that original? Yes, we did, in the original motion. Okay, I will call the question. All those in favor? And any opposed? One opposed? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Doug.
Not quite sure what happened, but I guess the city could explain it to me after.
We'll send you a letter, Douglas.
I just want to explain again from a developer who's trying to bring affordable housing to a depressed part of the community that we have 3 other properties that are zoned this, that derelict house right beside that unit I own. And going through this process, I have to really weigh the costs and just say, I'm going to build a single family house. We're going to lose an affordable house, and we're going to, I don't have to comply to any of the design processes. So what we're going to get is a single family house that could have been a duplex with no landscaping at all, and it's going to be whatever we want it. And I think that's a real shame.
I'm sorry, but I think you shouldn't have that. I'm sorry, but you're making the comment, and I think because the neighborhood is depressed, doesn't mean it should be. That means you should do the best you can. Not
well,
just.
and I will in a single family house, but it won't be a duplex.
It sounds like it's a threat.
Well, no, I'm telling you, I mean, I'm happy to say that last year, Sunporch Homes won the best single-family house, spec house in Vancouver Island. We built good homes. We are going to build on the other lot, but what I'm saying is the extra costs and the layering that's being required here for the duplex makes a duplex unaffordable to build. So it will force somebody like myself to bypass this process and go back to single-family homes, which the guidelines, as I mentioned right at the beginning, is trying to encourage density. But as a builder on a small lot like this, it's discouraging me to build density. So it's just an open comment I want to share because now builders building.
I think there's an OCT review right now called Reimagine the Niles. You can put your comments in.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. Okay, I think we have no other, well, we certainly have no other presentations, so I think we can call for adjournment. And all those in favor? Thank you very much, everyone.